This is a phrase you've probably heard a lot lately, that the Xbox is dead. While the Xbox team have made some incredibly terrible decisions over the last year, I have to say that Xbox is not dead, at least not yet. I think like a lot of people, looking at the decisions that Microsoft have made around the Xbox brand over the last year or so have been difficult to comprehend. I mean, not only have they been raising the price of consoles, you look at something like Game Pass, which feels like, quite simply, a cash grab just to go after the most hardcore Xbox loyalists. You look at the most unholy thing of all time, Master Chief on PlayStation, and you gotta ask, what the hell is the point? And honestly, all of these news articles and videos and people saying that the Xbox brand is dead, they have a point, because the Xbox brand is not what it used to be. But over the last few weeks, I've started to get a little bit of a better idea of at least what my opinion is on what the next generation is going to hold. I think at this point, I feel pretty confident in saying that there is a plan. I think the plan could be good if well executed. But is the Xbox brand even strong enough to pull it off at this point? I think it's pretty safe to say that the traditional console war is dead. And I say that mostly because Sony and Microsoft are finally taking very divergent paths on what they're doing with this next generation. From everything we're hearing, the PlayStation 6 will be largely a continuation of what's worked with the PS5. However, what Microsoft are doing feels like it is an entirely different thing. Look at the Xbox Ally. I recently reviewed it, and while there definitely are some redeeming features of it, it's such a weird device, because this is a device that's made by Asus, and it is this weird, like, co-marketed kind of thing. It's running Xbox's full-screen experience, which at first glance looks like an Xbox console, except that it is running Windows, and it has all of the baggage associated with it. I think they've been pretty clear, though, that the Xbox Ally is this sort of template for the next generation. I mean, both Sarah Bond as well as Phil Spencer have pretty much said outright that the next generation of Xbox is a thing, it is going to be more premium, and a lot of their thinking around it is very much going to be based on the Xbox Ally, which I think is a pretty clear way of saying that the next Xbox is PC. One of my biggest complaints with the Xbox Ally is that people see the word Xbox and think it's a console, and yet there are so many console things it doesn't do. Like, you cannot play Xbox games on the Xbox Ally. Now sure, you can play PC games, but you cannot just play your existing Xbox library unless it's on something like Game Pass. On top of that, there's no backwards compatibility. There's also a lot of issues when it comes to there's very poor support for sleep and wake, and let me just be honest, it is a Windows PC that has a better interface. It is a beta, if you will, of what could be, but it is not where it needs to be yet. Now, a lot of what I'm saying in this video is based on an article from Jez Corden of Windows Central, who has a stellar track record, and the big takeaways from his article is not only the fact that the next Xbox will of course be a PC and running Windows, but it is going to be hopefully a much more evolved version of what we have on the Ally. If you treat the Xbox Ally as the beta, and you assume that the next generation of Xbox is about a year and a half, 2 years out, this is where Xbox is headed. So by the time that the true Xbox is coming out, you will have a lot of this stuff sorted. It is going to be difficult to pull off, and some of this is actually going to come down to the actual chip. So the next generation of Xbox chip will be using AMD. Same thing with the series consoles. There are some hardware level things to help older games work, and I believe that will also be the case here. But it's bigger than that, because on one hand, the idea of an Xbox being a PC and allowing you to do all the PC things you want, load up a copy of Steam, hell, jump into the desktop and open up Photoshop. Like, all those things are and will be possible. But the important thing to note here is that a lot of the jank in the Xbox Ally experience needs to be fixed. And according to Jez at least, that does seem like that is the goal. And I have heard that they are really, really deep into rebuilding significant portions of Windows. I think about the Steam Deck a lot. It's such a good analogy. The Steam Deck is pretty much what Microsoft are trying to do. You turn on the Steam Deck, you light it up, and it is going to dump you directly into big picture mode. You can do everything you need to inside of big picture mode. But guess what? Do you want the desktop? Push a button, hop into the desktop, and you have full freedom of Linux. And I think that's pretty much what Microsoft are trying to do here. To me, that is going to be the real mark of if they are successful with this next generation of fusing the best of Xbox and Windows together. I think one of the big things that we're all going to need to wrap our heads around with this next generation of Xbox is that it is not just going to be a box, but it's going to be a PC. And I think it's going to be priced like a PC, because something that's important to consider is that, especially for the entire Xbox sort of lifetime, these consoles have always been sold with a real subsidy attached. And what I mean by that is that, say, when the Xbox One came out, these are boxes that are meant to be affordable But importantly, they need to make money. So the way they did that was they would sell it for usually at cost or below, and instead expect to make the money by selling you games or Game Pass or whatever the case is. This is the way the consoles have pretty much worked forever, and that's just not going to be the case when you're selling a PC that someone might just open up Steam and never touch the Xbox store again. Now, I want to be clear, I don't want to say that this next generation of Xbox will be every dollar as expensive as it needs to be to profit. On one hand, the Xbox itself, so this is the first party one that Microsoft's going to release, that is going to be, in my opinion, something closer to like a reference graphics card. But what I also think is you will be able to buy an Xbox from other third-party companies. Just the same way that Asus sell the Xbox Ally, I think there was going to be a bit of a free-for-all. So my understanding is that what the next Xbox is really going to be is a standard. So there's going to be a number of different AMD chips, so there's a codenamed Magnus, and the idea is that they're going to be modular. So say the core Magnus is meant to be in the Series S replacement, and then there would be a Magnus Minus, which would go into the next generation of handhelds, and then there would be Magnus Plus, which would go into the next generation of Xbox Series X. So you get the idea here that just like there are multiple Xboxes today with the Series S and the Series X, there will be multiple tiers of Xbox. Now how they brand this, I don't know, but it does seem pretty clear to me that while you will be buying an Xbox in name, they will look very different on the actual store shelves. And importantly for you as an end user, you're still gonna have the full freedom, theoretically, of Windows, but you'll also have at least a little bit more of a console experience, not only with the software, but also with a bit of a guarantee that this game is going to run without having to change a bunch of settings and whatnot. You can make a real argument that this is not necessarily good for gamers. I think that we've all gotten accustomed to buying a relatively affordable console. And I think that there might be some of that we still get with this next generation of Xbox, but I'd be lying if I said that this is not a pretty big gamble. Because on one hand, if you look at the PC space, there is a huge amount of growth there that's still happening, whereas the consoles have been a little bit static over the last 5-6 years. And the Xbox team are already setting expectations. Sarah Bond has said that the next generation of the Xbox will be a more premium experience. And premium is another word for expensive. There's nothing wrong with the premium experience, but if you look at the potential downsides of, say I'm in a store and I want to buy a console for my little Timmy, well, I could spend $500 or $600 on a PlayStation, or I might be spending $800 or $1,000 on an Xbox. I think a lot of people look at the big number and go, yikes, why is the Xbox so expensive? And they buy themselves a PS6, or a Switch, or a Game.com. The days of a $300 or $500 Xbox are long gone. In fact, the conspiratorial part of me almost thinks that's because Xbox are trying to subtly prepare you for what a world with a $700, $800 or $900 plus Xbox really looks like. If you walk with me in the idea that there will be multiple tiers of Xbox, I think that actually has a lot of very big knock-on effects. So first and foremost, actually on the PC industry, I think most people can agree that if I click one button, I just go to regular Windows and I get to do my thing, or I can get to move into a much more seamless, much more streamlined interface that's much more console-like. That seems like a win-win. And I'm going to assume that the price to performance is actually gonna be pretty decent. I think in a lot of ways, it will at least keep the market somewhat honest. Does that mean that we might have a $1,500 Xbox that comes from like the Legion team or something? Very possible. But I also think it's just as possible that $1,500 Xbox is gonna perform the same way as a $2,000 PC or something. I gotta say, when the Microsoft team rolled out the everything is an Xbox marketing campaign, I rolled my eyes so hard. But I think in hindsight now, they've been pretty firm on this. This is sort of their plan. And I think that now we're really seeing what that anything is. This actually does feel like kind of a decent strategy, perhaps. But the problem, the biggest problem here is this all hinges on how well do they execute. When you're building it on third-party hardware, which may have its own problems and may be more expensive than it should be or whatever the case is, it is going to reduce a little bit of that sort of level of quality. And when you say that everything is an Xbox, almost by default, some of those Xboxes are not going to be good. I think the key to understanding a lot of the questionable decisions the Xbox team have made over the last couple of years is that supposedly the CFO of Microsoft has been putting serious pressure on the Xbox team to up their profit margins. And when they're burning billions of dollars on AI, it kind of makes sense that they're trying to tighten the belt anywhere they can. It seems pretty clear to me that they have this mandate from up high that they've got to make money. And they are making money. Xbox is more profitable than ever, but it is really hard to justify some of the price increases that Microsoft have been pushing through this year. I understand that Xbox is a business, and the function of a business is to make profit. And I think looked through that lens, you can see why a lot of the decisions have been made. But it also makes sense why they've been cutting studios. So traditionally, before Microsoft went on such a binge over the last 8-9 years of buying all these studios, what would happen is you as a studio would create a game. And if your game is successful, congratulations. If it failed, your studio was bankrupt. And what we're seeing is a little bit more of that mentality when it comes to Microsoft. Turn 10 is a great example. Ultimately, they created a game that was very expensive, it was not successful, and the studio was gutted. That is the way that a traditional video game publisher works, which is all about profit and not about the long-term thinking. And I think that that's one of the things that concerns me, because they've done massive, massive damage to the Xbox brand over the last couple of years. It's funny, looking at Game Pass, one of the things that for a while it felt like it was becoming was Netflix. But not like Netflix now, Netflix in the glory days. Like, do you remember when Netflix was the only streaming subscription you had and there was no reason to pirate anything because everything was so convenient, all right there? And then there came Max and Disney Plus. And for a minute, I kind of thought that Game Pass was going to be that do everything sort of platform, right? But I think the problem that they ran into was that while Game Pass grew very quickly, I think it kind of plateaued. And when it stopped growing, they realized, oh, wait a minute, we're not hitting the sort of numbers that we need for this whole situation to make sense, largely because they haven't sold enough Xboxes. It went from being a no-brainer that if you had an Xbox, of course you had Game Pass, to now it's like, well, you really want to play Call of Duty and not buy it. I guess Game Pass makes sense. Ultimately, I think that that is part of the reason why we've seen them cranking up these prices. It makes sense that they've got to make money. They spent $70 billion on Activision. They gotta make some money on that. And I'm not even mad, honestly, at the idea of them bringing Xbox exclusives over to the PlayStation. It's almost like the social contract was broken, but in a way that like is good for everybody. Is it really hurting you that your friend with a PlayStation can now play your Xbox game? Like, I get it's weird, trust me. I actually think that there's nothing incorrect about bringing Xbox games to PlayStation. And hell, there's nothing stopping them from bringing Halo to the Switch or whatever. Like, if you're gonna play your game wherever you want. There was a quote very recently that Xbox's main competitor isn't PlayStation. No. It's TikTok and Netflix. And I think a lot of gamers saw that and go, no, don't make another Xbox One, please don't, no, don't do that. It reminds me of, I think it was like a year or two ago where someone from Netflix was like, oh, our number one competitor is sleep. And I think what these companies are trying to say is that there are only so many hours in the day for you to want entertainment. Maybe it's going to see a movie, maybe it's going to watch some Netflix or watch some of your favorite or second favorite or third favorite YouTuber on YouTube. I know that that's very true for me. I don't have a lot of time to enjoy relaxing. And I think that if you think about it, it's an easy way to make a point, but I think it's just that. It's a point that on its face seems patently ridiculous. The question, is Xbox dead, is such a big one, because I fully believe that there is a next generation of Xbox. My hope is that they nail this thing. And having used the Xbox Ally, I can say with a lot of confidence, they have a lot of work to do. We need Xbox to be healthy. You might be the biggest Sony fanboy in the world. Do you want to live in a world where Sony gets to do whatever they want? Bottom line is this, we're at a fork in the road when it comes to the Xbox, because on one hand, they are going to have tons of potential to bring this thing back from what has honestly been a really rough few years. But on the other hand, they have a huge amount of work to make sure that the Xbox stays healthy and vibrant going into the future. Because imagine a world in which your Xbox PC is reasonably priced, powerful, plays all the games, gives you the best of all Windows worlds and the best of the console world. At that point, it's great. But until they get to that point, I'm gonna take all this with a huge grain of salt. Xbox isn't dead, and I hope it stays that way.